Hi everyone and welcome to week 6 of the Quitting Quadrant. So last week we looked at the inner circle. So these are the 4 areas that are the extreme versions of flow, growth, grit and restore that we're likely to be in when we're in those versions for too long or it's too extreme. So plateau, burnout, resentment and apathy tend to be these negative expressions of the outer circle, and they're the moments when we're most likely to quit. So the invitation today is to look at what do we do if we don't want to quit and we want to get out of that inner circle. Of course, you might find yourself in that inner circle and decide it is actually better if I quit. And I think being really honest with yourself in this and saying, do I want to find a solution? Do I want to find a way to get out of this can be really helpful, because sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't want to find a solution. You just actually, knowing that you're showing up in this inner circle is telling you probably this isn't the right activity for me. However, we want to find a way to get out if this is something you want to pursue. So one of the things that I've realised is that when we are in the inner circle, what we need is the thing that's directly opposite. So if you're in burnout, which is high interest and high discomfort, what we need at that point is the thing that's low interest and low discomfort, or restore. And we can do this either consciously or unconsciously. And what I mean by that is that, for example, with burnout, you could carve in time to have restore if you find yourself in that state, or you can wait until it happens to you, where you have no choice but to take a break. And I've noticed, I've looked at all of these and they do show up like that. So with plateau, you can either say consciously, right, I need to get this next challenge. I need to do something that's going to really push me. I need to run a marathon or take on a really crazy new project that's going to be really character building and hard. Or what often happens in plateau is we start creating problems. We start, I don't know, I often find that I'll say, oh, I need to move house, or I need to do something, I need to take on a new challenge, but possibly not from a place of consciousness. I just start creating problems. So if you're in plateau, how can you consciously create a new challenge that's going to put you in that character building grit phase? If you find yourself in apathy, how can you be consciously looking for growth opportunities and developing yourself in a way that feels exciting and high interest? And if you're in resentment, how can you be consciously looking for moments of flow and joy? I often find with resentment, if we're in here, this is where a lot of humour comes, and a lot of maybe also going out drinking and things like that. You need that light relief. You need something to shift that energy. So again, it's whether we can do that consciously or unconsciously, and we can start choosing things that are going to bring us back into flow. And there's 2 ways you can do this if you want to get out. You can either look within the activity you're talking about and think, how can I bring in more restore? Or how can I bring in more growth? Or you can look at where else in your life you have opportunities to amplify the one that's opposite. So potentially you don't have an opportunity to take some restore with your job, but you might find that there's other things that you can build restore into. Potentially you don't have the opportunity to bring in more grit in your job, but you might find that there's something outside that you can bring it in. Or it might be that you find opportunities within it. But the reason I say this is there can be a temptation, especially I think in these kind of high discomfort areas, that the best thing to do is to remove everything. And I've definitely looked at this with myself as well. When you're in a kind of overwhelm or high discomfort, it can feel like, well, I'll just quit everything and I'll just remove a lot of the barriers. And I don't think that's always the right thing. Sometimes it can actually be better to add stuff on if it brings more balance. So although we're feeling overwhelmed, it might be about adding something, not taking away, adding something that brings flow or restore to an already busy schedule in order to have an overall sense of well-being. So I want you to play with that a bit with this. It's not necessarily about taking away, even if there's overwhelm. I know I've got a friend who's a teacher who was working incredibly hard, and actually she took on an additional project which brought her so much joy, and she was definitely in flow. And when I showed her this, she said, that's really interesting because it is more work, but overall I'm feeling better. So that's one thing I'm going to offer you to do, to look at which part of the inner circle did you say you were in on the week 5 task, and then how can you be bringing in the thing that's directly opposite so that you can get more balance. And I've also got a list of coaching questions this week. These are ones I've developed to support me when I found myself in different parts of the inner circle. And I'm going to send that as a document. And this is an additional task if you would like that support, but I found it a really useful self-coaching tool when I found myself in the inner circles to get me out. So come and join us in the Facebook group and share any findings or anything that you got out of this week's task, and look forward to seeing you there. Bye.